All right, and we're good.
Okay. Well, good afternoon. My name again is Jim Bennett and Water Resources Manager for the County of San Diego. As I stated, Director on the Borrego Springs Water Master Board, and I'll be presenting the Borrego Springs Land Repurposing Project for the Borrego Springs Subbasin along with Leanne Crow, who had introduced herself as a senior hydrogeologist with the county and an alternate director for the Borrego Water Master. So the 98 square mile Borrego Springs Subbasin is located in the northeastern portion of San Diego County, surrounded by the 600,000 acre Anza Borrego Desert State Park. The Borrego Springs community is visited by thousands of people each year when the desert comes alive with hundreds of species of desert wildflowers in bloom, especially this year after all the rains we got. Tourism is a central and vital part of the Borrego Springs economy. And Borrego Springs is also recognized as a dark sky community and frequented by stargazers during celestial events. And much of the populated areas of Borrego Springs are classified either as a disadvantaged or severely disadvantaged community. Since the early 1950s, pumping for irrigated agriculture, golf courses that came into play over the decades, residential and commercial uses have used more groundwater than is available through natural recharge. And because of the basin's groundwater dependence and continuous groundwater elevation declines over the past 70 years, DWR designated the 98 square mile subbasin as high priority and critically overdrafted. This figure, it shows decreases in water levels beneath the Borrego Springs area from 1945 to 2011. And the red areas on the map represent the most severe drawdown locations, with many areas of Borrego having 100 to 150 foot and even greater declines. So the primary developed land uses in the groundwater dependent basin are agriculture, residential, and recreational, largely golf courses. There are 42 non-de minimis groundwater pumpers in the basin who are subject to pumping restrictions and reductions that are required by SGMA. So agriculture accounts for about 75% of the annual groundwater production and includes farms that grow predominantly citrus and palm trees. And substantial reductions in water use are already occurring. More than 750 acres of land have been fallowed so far, with about 2,600 acres of actively irrigated farms that remain. Borrego Water District serves nearly the entire municipal population, a little over 2,600 residences, and accounts for about 10% of the water use. And then golf courses account for about 15% of the water use. And collectively, the water use in the basin is around 6.5 billion gallons of water per year. So recognizing the importance of groundwater in this critically overdrafted basin, the county and Borrego Water District, as GSAs for the basin, sought to involve stakeholders in the development of the groundwater sustainability plan. And to aid this effort, we established an advisory committee composed of a broad cross-section of groundwater pumpers and interested community members. We presented at the Borrego Springs Community Sponsor Group, the county's Planning Commission, and the County Board of Supervisors in a series of hearings. And SGMA was regularly discussed at Borrego Water District board meetings, town halls, and other nighttime meetings that were held to accommodate those who work during the day. The county's interested persons list was used to send notices about upcoming meetings or updates to our SGMA website. And DAC outreach included direct mailers, accessible workshops, and informal settings like door-to-door engagement that included Spanish translation. And recurring updates were also published in the Borrego Sun newspaper that serves the community. The extensive outreach that the county undertook during the sustainability plan development demonstrates our commitment to collaboration, and we've established a strong foundation to ensure that diverse interests are meaningfully incorporated into the Borrego Springs Land Repurposing Project. After more than 2.5 years of stakeholder outreach that included 19 public advisory committee meetings, the county and Borrego Water District completed the groundwater sustainability plan in 2019 in August. The sustainability plan concluded that a 75% reduction in groundwater use would be needed to comply with the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And as an alternative to the county and Borrego Water District adopting the sustainability plan, representatives from agriculture, golf courses, and the Borrego Water District worked together, and they developed a stipulated agreement to adjudicate the water rights in the basin while using the sustainability plan as the foundational document in the agreement. In April 2021, the court approved the stipulated judgment and established the Borrego Springs Water Master as the entity responsible for implementing SGMA and the judgment for the basin. The 5-member Water Master Board includes a representative from the Borrego Water District, the agricultural sector, golf courses, the Borrego Springs community, and the county. The county is also a member of the Technical Advisory Committee and the Environmental Working Group, which were established to advise the Water Master Board. And all of these meetings are open to the public. In addition, the Water Master employs legal counsel and a technical consultant, which includes an executive director to handle the day-to-day operations. Based on outreach to the 42 non-de minimis pumpers in the community, the county will develop a basin-specific multi-benefit land repurposing plan that will identify and prioritize potential projects to address groundwater sustainability. We'll detail each project's benefits to the community and farmers, focusing on socially disadvantaged farmers, include quantifiable estimates of those benefits, such as how many acres repurposed and how much groundwater would be saved, and include a plan for implementation that will identify the most effective strategies for engaging and collaborating with stakeholders, the planning and permitting required for implementation, and monitoring requirements. Since fallowing farmland is recognized as the primary tool to reduce groundwater demand, repurposing farmland is already a topic of discussion in the community. Therefore, the county's participation on the environmental working group for the Water Master is expected to play a role in developing the multi-benefit land repurposing plan. The repurposing plan is expected to be a key element to develop pipeline projects for future funding and encourage thoughtful and focused fallowing that provides multiple environmental and community benefits.
While specific project benefits will vary, a reduction in groundwater use would be paramount. Environmental benefits like habitat restoration and connectivity are also expected. As the group that implements the climate action plan for the county, we are mindful of projects that would provide an added climate benefit. For example, carbon farming or agricultural practices aimed at increasing storage of atmospheric carbon in soil is expected to be a consideration when weighing project benefits. To meet atmospheric carbon reduction goals, the desert environment, if conserved, functions as a carbon sink. Other important considerations will be project components that support the economy or provide local jobs, and projects that improve the health of the community and support flood resilience. Although farmers are required by the stipulated judgment to reduce groundwater use by 75%, identifying specific benefits to farmers will be instrumental for incentivizing their participation in this project. For the project development and permitting phase, the county will work with interested property owners, partners, and consultants to develop project ideas, designs, environmental documents, legal agreements, cost estimates, timelines, permits, and plans that will be needed during project implementation. The task will benefit greatly from the input provided during Water Master, Environmental Working Group, Borrego Springs Sponsor Group, and other public meetings, along with direct outreach to the Borrego farming community. The county anticipates utilizing staff, expertise, and consultants to provide support to our partners during this phase of the project. The county is committed to furthering the community's vision to expand upon the natural desert and history by conserving and protecting natural open space, native plants, scenic views, and the dark sky environment. Recent conversations with farmers have resulted in several potential project ideas for the Borrego Springs land repurposing project, including rewilding landscapes and floodplain restoration for a property adjacent to Coyote Creek that would have an added benefit of creating a recharge area. Acquiring land and restoring habitat on properties adjacent to the state park, which contribute to resource connectivity. restoring agricultural land adjacent to the historic Santa Catarina Trail to native desert, converting existing fruit and nursery operations to high-density olives for olive oil production to sustain land-based economies, and creating parks, trails, or community recreation areas to benefit the disadvantaged community of Borrego Springs. All of these potential projects will require grant funding to be implemented and are consistent with the stated goals of the Multi-Benefit Land Repurposing Program. The project development phase is anticipated to occur simultaneously with development of the multi-benefit plan. We had an opportunity to visit a recently fallowed farm with the Watermaster Environmental Working Group and Land IQ consultants. The property owner is interested in potentially repurposing the land adjacent to Coyote Creek with native vegetation. The Environmental Working Group is tasked with advising the Borrego Springs Watermaster on the protection of human health and the environment, along with management and environmental restoration of fallowed lands. The Environmental Working Group is composed of experts in natural resource management and includes the former superintendent of the Anza Borrego Desert State Park. Land IQ specializes in biological restoration of agricultural lands and provided recommendations and tips for success during the site visit. The group recommended focusing on a few species expected to be successful for establishment rather than a broad palette of species given the harsh desert environment. Because of limited rainfall in the desert along with periodic flood events, ripping and rough grading of the land was shown to be more successful for plant recruitment. Also, creating microhabitats through mounding was found to be beneficial since this can provide needed shade and moisture retention, which promotes plant growth. This project may be considered for implementation during the project development and permitting phase. Upon completion of the project development and permitting phase, the county will utilize existing staff and consultants to implement project designs, biological rehabilitation, and management plans specific to each project. Projects selected for implementation will provide a benefit to groundwater sustainability, as well as at least one other community health, economic well-being, habitat, flood, or climate benefit. Benefits to the environment, or SDAC, would include improving air quality, creating biological habitat, native vegetation or recreational spaces, or creating new sources of revenue, jobs, or educational opportunities. While the county will begin outreach at the onset of the Borrego project, education and training is expected to coincide with the implementation phase, which would allow for real-time hands-on learning in the field of ecological restoration of desert environments. The county intends on working with the Anza Borrego Foundation to enhance existing educational programs, which includes its partnership with UC Irvine's Steel Burnand Anza Borrego Desert Research Center, or the Borrego Springs Unified School District, to supplement the career technology education pathway in energy, environment, and utilities for Borrego Springs middle school and high schools. To monitor progress and evaluate the success of the Borrego project, the county will perform the following monitoring. Work with the Watermaster to ensure groundwater use reductions are proceeding as planned for the affected properties. Document progress of outreach, education, and project implementation. Demonstrate success of rehabilitation, restoration projects with photographs and other developed performance metrics, and provide quarterly status updates. The county will also explore the idea of utilizing the existing labor force in Borrego Springs for monitoring and maintenance activities when feasible. Partnerships are an important component of this project, and the county sought and received support letters from these entities. Prior to applying for this grant, the county intends on providing staff and consulting the county intends on providing staff and consulting support to our partners throughout project development and implementation of the project. The Watermaster will provide technical support and facilitate public meetings of the Watermaster Board, the Environmental Working Group, and the Technical Advisory Committee. The Anza Borrego Desert State Park partners with the Anza Borrego Foundation to advance research opportunities and provide educational and interpretive programs. The Anza Borrego Foundation currently holds 3,190 acres for the purpose of adding to state park lands for conservation in and around the park, educating the public about the park's resources, and supporting research relevant to the region. AWARE supports the farming community in Borrego by participating at Water Master Board meetings, providing legal guidance, and serving as the middleman between individual farmers and the county and Water Master. This partnership is expected to be instrumental during the project development and permitting phases of the project. Borrego Water District is the sole water district in the basin and participates in Water Master and Technical Advisory Committee meetings and will assist identifying and recommending potential land repurposing projects. The Borrego Springs Land Repurposing Project for the Borrego Springs subbasin will be managed by the Sustainable Groundwater Management Team in Planning and Development Services. With a budget of $53.2 million and staff of 272, Planning and Development Services has the necessary resources and experience to manage all phases of this project. To aid in implementing, the county intends on hiring consultants with expertise in ecological rehabilitation of desert environments. This concludes our presentation, and we're available to answer your questions.
Great. Thank you so much. At this point, I will open it up for the reviewers to see if anyone has any questions, and then I have some set questions to ask you after that. And maybe you can open up, take down the presentation so we can see each other a little more.
Okay, for some of the questions we may want to share some extra slides, but
All right.
okay.
Cool. I mean, I guess one question for me, just because I'm not as familiar with desert landscapes. So, I mean, if you're looking at fallowing desert landscapes, what this is such a I don't know. This is a very beginner question, but what happens to those landscapes when just fallowed in a desert ecosystem, and what added, like, if there is no intervention done to restore the landscape, what happens to those landscapes when agriculture is taken off the land?
So yeah, it's a good question because we've already seen examples of what happens. It kind of depends on the location of the land. For lands that are not near water sources like streams, very little vegetation takes on the land. There's examples of land that was fallowed clear back to the 1960s where it's fairly compacted and you may have a few weeds and it's largely barren land. It ends up being blighted and it stays that way for a long time. And I mean, I'm thinking of some of the lands where literally from 60 years and there's no growth on the land at all. There is also cases where farms have been fallowed next to streams where there is water that periodically floods it. And we've seen like rapid growth in those areas. So, but that's few and far between because the streams only cover portions of the valley. So it's really a mixed bag with most of the intervention, no intervention leading to very poor outcomes.
It's also a concern of the community because when the wind kicks up out there, the dust gets really bad. So they're looking to see it not be a blighted area and really having to replant that and try and get it growing again.
And when they've had the dust issues, what have been have the local air boards require different, I don't know, mitigation measures to reduce the dust, and what do those look like compared to what's being proposed here?
For farmland that's been fallowed, the air board they don't have a whole lot of precedents to set regulation for it. So it's really an unregulated part of the system. So that really underscores the need for voluntary actions to be done because there's really no impetus for farmers to really put anything in place without grant money that would come forward to be able to aid it.
Any other questions before I go to Ernest?
Hi, thank you. So I just had a quick question before we jump into the other ones. But in addition to the 42 non-de minimis users that you focused outreach on, is there outreach or any representation on the advisory committee from the minimis users here?
Jim, do you want to?
Yeah,
Talk-
I mean, the de minimis users have been represented by the community at large. Like there are protections for their continued use without restrictions and regulations that apply to them. And they have been they've been represented through community members that have been on the advisory committees through the years.
All right, thank you.
In the in your governance slide that talked about the governance structure of the I think it's the groundwater sustainability, the GSA. It mentioned that there were working groups for disadvantaged community. There's a I think it was a disadvantaged community working group. I was just curious how much they, it looked like the water master board, right? So the board is in one color and then the others are in kind of a different color. How would you characterize the participation of the environmental working group, the technical advisory committee, and like how much are disadvantaged communities represented in those groups or through the community member, I guess?
The Borrego Water District is probably the strongest member that we have on the Water Master Board that is connected to the disadvantaged community because they actually serve water to the community itself. And they've been actively involved through their own means to be able to interact directly with them through flyers that they place in the mail. They've had town hall meetings that they've had to continue to update the DAC on the Sigma implementation. And they're continuing to look for opportunities to just continue to educate the DAC, and very interested in connecting to the elementary, the middle school, and the high schools where the DAC community has their children attend school to be able to educate their children on things that are going. The Borrego Water District has been active in touting their conservation efforts that they've been taking, and also on Sigma activities. That's where they really want to continue to reach to that, and this grant would be part of that, to be able to utilize those partnerships that are in place.
We also have been lucky enough to have our community rep member on the Water Master Board. The alternate director attends the meetings, and she is fluent in Spanish, and she works at the school. So she has been a conduit for a lot of outreach for us, and we've been thankful for that. She's been there for many years and has been really helpful for us.
All right, thank you. All right, let's go to the stock questions. The first one,
There is maybe one more
oh,
question.
oh, I'm sorry, Cassidy. I jumped over.
That's fine. That's fine. Just kind of piggybacking on that last question about the DAC community involvement. Have there been any identified organizations locally that would be good to connect with, or that are kind of in that DAC community already, apart from the schools, that as well might be a resource or otherwise a way to reach both that community, but also agricultural workers?
Yeah, there is. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, did you want to talk about the LASAR report that was prepared? Maybe we can get into that.
Sure. Yeah, we can certainly talk about that. So, as part of the groundwater sustainability plan, LASAR consultants prepared a DAC impact vulnerability assessment to look at how Sigma was going to impact the SDAC community, and largely that effort included special meetings where they were reaching out to the DAC with bilingual interpretation during the meetings, and to inform the DAC community of GSP activities that were ongoing. And then the assessment itself was developed through working directly with the DAC. There's a group that the Borrego Water District works with called, I know the word Latin X is in it, and it's a group that directly connects with the SDAC in the community that Borrego Water District has utilized. The assessment concluded that the community's tourism industry is not highly dependent on water, and that in contrast to agriculture, could be further developed to offset agricultural job losses. And we would be utilizing much of the same connections that were developed in the GSP to connect with the agricultural community and the socially disadvantaged farmers, as well as AWARE, who is connected to the farms that are out there. We have every farmer's name and information to outreach to, so there'd be nobody that would be excluded. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you so much. And if we have just a moment, I had one other question, more so related to the environmental side. So it was mentioned that for some of the lands identified for maybe fallowing and rehabilitation, kind of thinking, you know, previous conversation of not wanting to fallow and then just have that desert landscape, not other, or maybe to create potential air quality or other issues. If you're looking at, you know, rehabilitating land, there are, and knowing there are probably quite a few botanical and animal species out in that area that might be of concern, to what degree do you have existing CEQA documents that you could rely on that would allow for that type of work to occur, or would you kind of be starting from the beginning as it relates to CEQA? Because I know that could take longer and maybe a little bit more cost as well.
Well, the one thing that we're working with is land that has been completely cleared, which from a CEQA perspective, our baseline is one of complete loss of habitat in most cases for the agricultural land that was cleared, which really helps to facilitate not having to go into a full CEQA evaluation, because we're basically taking blighted land that has been farmed for decades and completely cleared and devoid of vegetation and rehabilitating it. And from a CEQA perspective, that's going to streamline things quite a bit.
Okay. Is that good? All right. Question number 1 is, what is your fiscal and administrative capacity to manage this grant? What controls do you have in place to ensure that grant dollars are spent efficiently and managed responsibly?
So as I stated, planning and development services, that's our department, and our current budget, which is actually slated to go up next year, is 53.2 million, and we have a staff of 272. Our in-house expertise, you know, hydrogeologists, project managers, planners, biologists, ecology experts, landscape architecture, agricultural, air quality, land development, parks and trails, permit processing, accounting. We have quite a bit of resources to lean on. We would likely hire an outside consultant with expertise in desert rehabilitation, just because that's kind of a pretty focus area. Let's see, what else did I want to say here? Yeah, so our adopted budget for next year for the county, it will be 7.36 billion and includes 0.63 billion for luge. So that's our group, and planning and development services is below that. And I wanted to, did you want to say something, Jim?
No, go
No,
ahead. I was
okay.
just going to say the consultant team would also we'd be looking for expertise in really being able to facilitate comprehensive stakeholder engagement, that we'd really be leaning upon that to really comprehensively connect us with all the resources that we've been talking about in the community.
And so the way we manage all of our projects, any of our programs, is that we have, the county implements a general management system, and it's really a continuous cycle of planning, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation to make sure that our board's our priorities are maintained and our goals are achieved. So we have long range 5-year strategic planning. So we look ahead 5 years and say, what do we want to do? You know, and we're planning our budget that way. We start that way, and then it's followed by the short term 2-year operational planning where revenues are budgeted and based on goals established in the strategic plan. For monitoring and controlling takes place throughout the year to ensure the plans are followed, risks are identified, goals are tracked, results reported. And then we have what we call functional threading, and that's coordinating our resources to maximize efficient use of personnel and material. And then, of course, we have the motivation, my favorite, the motivation, rewards, and recognition of employees to encourage progress by rewarding employees who meet and exceed those goals.
That's great. Thank you. And with some of these questions, you guys have
Mhm.
covered them, so you can
Yeah.
feel free to just reference your response, and then if you want to add anything else, we can add something else. So question number 2, describe the partnerships and collaborations you've built or plan to build to support your work, which we were just talking about, and how you will utilize those connections to plan, develop, and implement land repurposing projects throughout your region. How will each partner contribute to the work conducted under the, grant? We just spent quite a bit of time on this. Do you have anything to add to this question?
Yeah, I'll just try to maybe fill in a little bit of our own personal history and all this. Like I've been working at the county since 2005, Leanne since 2015, working in Borrego Springs. You know, quite a bit of our time has been spent there. And going back to 2005, when I first started, it was a different world from the connections that did not exist back then. There was the county and the Borrego Water District were collecting groundwater levels for decades, showing that we had a problem. We didn't have regulations to back it up at that time, and the farmers were in total distrust of the Borrego Water District and the county in regard to our talks about overdraft and problems within the groundwater basin. You know, there was really a difficult working environment amongst the stakeholders in the basin, and no regulations to back any true sustainable groundwater activity within the valley. So fast forwarding to 2013, the Borrego Water Coalition was set up by the Department of Water Resources, and they did that to bring a cross section of the groundwater pumpers together for the first time. And so the Borrego Water District, the county, the farmers, the golf course operators, and other groundwater pumpers in the basin all sat down at the table together. And this was prior to Sigma, and it really was absolutely pivotal to the success of this basin because it formed those initial relationships and broke down that distrust amongst the pumpers. And then a couple years later, Sigma gets enacted. The Borrego Water District and the county go forward with a groundwater sustainability planning process. And we developed this groundwater sustainability advisory committee where the community then was completely inserted into the process after getting the pumpers together in 2013 with that Borrego Water Coalition. The advisory committee was able to bring in pretty much all sectors of the community, with the stewardship council that is really essential in touting and bringing forward the geotourism element of Borrego. A Borrego Water District ratepayer who was actively involved with the DAC community and looking at really trying affordability for water. We had state parks at the table for interconnection with water as it relates to the state park that surrounds the community. The sponsor group, which does land use related issues, and the coalition also had an at-large community member that was further connected with the community on community related issues that got put into the groundwater sustainability plan. So I mean that's really kind of the history, and we're now working through the water master. And we have these partners, the Borrego Springs Water Master. Obviously, we've talked about that entity, and you know the reality of having at the table now we have a community member, we've got agriculture, we have the water district, and we have the golf courses all working together towards a common goal of sustainable management of this basin, reporting directly to the court. And the water master has an environmental working group that we talked about. And that environmental working group is really key. That the former superintendent of the Anza Borrego State Park sits on it, as well as other environmental members who are tasked with looking at fallowing as a major part of their work, to really look at ways in which to facilitate rehabilitation in a harsh desert environment. And they're certainly going to be a key part of working as a partner in this grant opportunity. The Anza Borrego Foundation, they have been gathering up lands throughout the valley through decades. They've transferred nearly 18,000 acres of land into desert park land, and they're very interested in farmland adjacent to the state parks, where we have interested farmers, where we could rehabilitate it, turn it into more wildflower lands, other types of environmental benefits to have that land become state park land ultimately. And it really has a benefit to the community, tourism, and the environment. Aware, we've talked about as the conduit between the farmers and the county. They have legal resources too, which are going to be needed for the document. We're going to be creating different agreements and different documents that are going to be needed for bringing farmers into this program. And farmers are pretty private, as you guys are probably pretty aware, and they tend to be a little leery of government. And having Aware and a strong relationship with them, this is the conduit, that this is the middleman for us to be able to work these agreements and be able to get farmers fully on board in working with us going forward. I think that's, is there anything else you wanted to add on this, Leon? That was what I had for.
No, I think that's good.
Okay, thank you.
So for question number 3, is there anything you want to add to how you've engaged with disadvantaged communities in your region in the past, or how you intend to engage and collaborate with them in your work under this proposed grant?
Yeah, I think we covered quite a bit in the Q&A right before this on the DAC community. And I think Leanne, did you want to touch on?
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I know the state has a best practices for DAC engagement document, and I looked through that, and we're doing quite a bit of that already. And our county is very focused on outreach to disadvantaged communities. But let's see, a couple of those things, we'd be meeting at the library, which is something we do. We have a brand new library out there, which is really a hub for the community. It's centrally located, and it's a community focal point. So we have majority of our meetings out there. We periodically meet during non-business hours to allow for that broad participation. We have interpretation services. We also utilize on our website Google Translate to increase access to materials in other languages. We translate meeting materials. We will be outreaching directly to the 42 non-de minimis pumpers in the basin. That'll include the socially disadvantaged farmers, consistent with the Farmer Equity Act. And then, BWD, Aware, and the school district are all really good conduits for us, for that outreach.
All right. And then the last question. So these grants are intended to be a partnership between the state and the regional block grant recipients. As a part of this grant, you'll attend monthly meetings with the department and our statewide support entity to ensure that you are supported in your work. I'll just add to this opening, what we really try to create is a community of practice amongst the different grantees under the program so that they can learn from each other and strengthen their programs. The first question here is, if you were to receive funding, what immediate support would you need from us at the department or our partners at the statewide support entity to begin your work?
Well, at the county, we're thankful that we have a lot of resources. We're a big county. We have a lot of resources, but I think we'd be looking for, best practices from the state. What are you guys, what's going on throughout the state? What are some other models that's happening? One of the programs that we administer is called PACE. It's the what is that? Acquisition of conservation easements, purchase of acquisition conservation easements. And so what that is we look for land within the county for farmers that are already farming, and we pay them to conserve that, to keep farming. Now, obviously, that would not be something we do in Borrego, but the way we do it is so we're looking for something that'll create a benefit that'll last for multiple years, and we have that have the property appraised and estimate a current fair market value of the property, and then subtract the estimated property value with that easement on it, and that becomes the compensation amount to those farmers. So I think similarly, we would look for some kind of what can we give, what kind of benefit can we give the farmers, what kind of compensation, and I think we'd be looking to the state for, what are they doing throughout the state for compensating farmers for, for not farming in this area, or for doing another project on that. So I think that would be one thing I can think of that we'd like to look for.
Yeah, we really want to make sure that we're consistent with what the state is doing statewide in terms of how we're implementing this grant over Borrego Springs. And then we'd need your guidance to know exactly how to apply funding, and what are
Yeah.
reasonable numbers to be given to different aspects of the grant program as we move forward. Because we're kind of in the dark, like what is reasonable compensation? All these types of questions are things that we're going to really need help with.
Yeah. And this is a relatively new body of practice, so some of those questions are being answered collectively as we go too, which is exciting and scary at the same time. Second question to this, what additional support do you envision, looking beyond the first startup phases, what additional support do you envision needing as your grant progresses? I don't know. Anything else on the horizon?
Did you want to take that, Jim, or do you want me to? I can take it. Well,
Okay.
what I would say is I think facilitating communication with the state park. I mean, we've already have our connections with the Anza-Borrego Foundation, but the wheels at the state move as slow as they do for most government agencies. So I think communication is going to be a big part, and collaboration with the University of California. So there's a UCI, Irvine has a research facility out there. And so we'd be looking to collaborate with them for technical support related to ecological restoration of desert environments. And I know that they've been doing a lot of work in that area. And those are the two areas I think that we would look to the state for some support.
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay.
All right. Are there any other comments or questions from the group? I see Shauna's hands up.
Yeah, I had one question. So you mentioned earlier on that you're looking to hire consultants to provide guidance on desert habitat rehabilitation, and you just mentioned potentially reaching out to UCI. And I kind of in that vein, do you have any plans, as well as in the vein of disadvantaged community outreach, do you have any plans to reach out to the local tribe on the work that you're doing around traditional ecological knowledge and around your program?
Jim, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'm just trying to, so for the county, the whole desert region doesn't have any tribal lands. The tribal lands are largely in the foothills and the mountains within San Diego County. So our entire desert, we don't have any tribal lands that are desert with where rehabilitation, that sort of resourcing, that's not something that we have considered. Our tribes, the closest ones are up in the mountains in an entirely different environment. Was there a second part to that question in terms of other groups? I wasn't.
That was the whole question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I would add that there are a number of tribes in San Diego County, and Jim and I work very closely with them on in other basins in Sigma, and so I think with regard to cultural aspects, obviously they have an interest throughout the region. You know, so there's always kind of a our natural communication that we have, our meetings that we have with them anyways. I think there'd probably be communication to, hey, we're doing projects in this region, and just to see if there's an interest there for cultural reasons, even if they don't have tribal lands in or around this area.
Great, thank you. All right, well, I think unless there's something else, I think that's all of it.
Okay, well,
So
thank you guys.
Yeah, I just want to thank you guys too for coming back, and it's a really interesting and unique proposal. You know, the recreation benefits and the unique circumstances of agriculture in the desert of this type, you know, just are unique and really interesting. So I really appreciate you guys coming and sharing those.
Great.
Thank you. One question I had, did you guys get a lot of applicants for this pool of money? I know there's not a lot to be spent. Yes?
Yeah, what was the final
Okay.
total, Shauna?
Just under $85 million in request.
Okay. Okay.
Well, that's a little better than last time. I think we were at 112 or 120 last time.
Yeah.
Well, the max request amount is also lower, so
Right.
that had an impact.
Okay.
Okay.
And there was proposed funding in the budget for $20 million for a next round. That may or may not change with the budget conversations this month. And then there's been generally a lot of support for the program and bond conversations. So I'm optimistic that this program can continue to push forward to fund these different rounds, you know, as demand continues. So, but
Okay.
we have what we have.
Okay, we appreciate the opportunity to interview with you today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Well, have a great one. See you
You too.
guys. Bye.
All right.
Okay.
Bye-bye.